This video shows how to overhaul a Shimano PD M520 pedal. These pedals are known among mountain bikers for being extremely reliable and a great value. What many cyclists don't realize, myself included until recently, is that they can and should be overhauled. Based on my experience, overhaul them every 10,000 miles, which includes disassembly and ball bearing replacement. The procedure, while not difficult, is somewhat tedious. So if you lack patience working with small parts, leave the job for a bike shop or go out and buy a new set of pedals. Let's get started. First, here's a Shimano pedal schematic with my annotation of part names as used in the video. Okay, the first thing you want to do is take your pedals off the bike. And if you don't know how to do that, there are instructions online on some bike repair video websites. I'm not going to show you how to do that. Just put this device here, slip it over the pedal like that. This is the right pedal. So here's how you turn it, take it off. For the right pedal, you turn clockwise. You unthread it. It should come off by hand. If it won't come off by hand, there's a place where you can put a wrench to get a better grip on it. And it just threads out. The spindle threads out like that. The reason you want to use the PD40 here is because I tried to take this off using a vice grip, and you can see where it knocked off a piece of the plastic because I clamped down on it too hard and broke a little piece of one of the notches off. You put your spindle in a vise, being careful not to clamp down too hard because you don't want to damage the metal. You put the 10mm wrench on the bottom thread, and then the 8mm wrench goes on top, and then you thread it off counterclockwise. It shouldn't be on very tight, and you just unthread that. Okay, now this is where you got to watch out because you've got ball bearings, 24 of them per pedal, that could come spilling out. There we go, take that nut off. Now I'll show you all the parts. There's the spindle, there's this sleeve with plastic and metal thread. There's 12 ball bearings in the upper race and 12 ball bearings in the lower race. You'll probably find that your ball bearings fall out because the grease has dissipated. Before cleaning the ball bearings, you should take off the entire sleeve. Get the ball bearings off. And I'll show you the parts that you'll have to deal with. There's this one here, this washer. Which has an indented section and a flat section. So the flat section goes against the thread. And then this part here that you're going to want to clean and grease. There's something that you should see here that's important for this pedal, and that is there's a rubber washer. This washer prevents water from getting into the pedal. I've noticed that after 3 or 4 years of use it gets worn out and it should be replaced. I don't know if you can find a replacement for it, but if you can, you should replace it. And it goes right in here, seats right in here. Once you're ready to reassemble, be sure you put some grease on the bottom of the race, on the spindle. The first thing you put back is this part with the notched end on it. Just slip it on. Make sure you've got your washer on there, and it goes on like so. Once you've got this sleeve on, the next part to put back is this washer, keeping the flat part against this sleeve right here. And the next step is to put on your bottom race bearings. Now we put our barrel on top of the bottom races. This is the finicky part where you have to be very careful pushing it on, making sure that the ball bearings stay in position inside the bottom race. You may have to use your screwdriver or fingers to make sure that they stay in place. There we go. Well, you're successful with this procedure when you can turn the barrel, the steel barrel with the races, freely, and the ball bearings don't fall out. Notice there's a gap. There's a small gap between the barrel and the washer. That's to be expected. There is going to be a gap there. Now we're ready to move to the next step, which is the upper race bearings. The upper race bearings are in now. They're much easier to put in than the lower race. By far the hardest part of this whole procedure is the lower race bearings. Once we get those in, we're ready to put the race nut and then the lock nut. Now we're ready to tighten down the lock nut against the 10mm race nut, and you tighten down the 8mm turning clockwise, and then you can back off the 10mm so that it's tight against the 8mm nut, and then you turn this barrel race with your fingers and it should be as smooth as glass. And there also should not be any play in it. If there's play, you need to tighten down on the 10mm lock nut, race nut, and then the 8mm goes down and tightens that down 10mm. And if it's grinding, that means the ball bearings have too much pressure on them, and so you have to back off the 8mm nut and then the 10mm race nut, and then make your adjustment so that it's smooth. And the final step is to put the spindle back into the pedal case. Here we are with our right pedal. Put the spindle into the pedal casing and turn the spindle by hand counterclockwise. There we go. And once it starts tightening up on you, put your PD on top. I like to use a rag to protect my hands because it's a little bit painful on the hands, and I just tighten it up by hand. You can see when you're done tightening, there's a gap. There should be no gap between the spindle and the pedal case. Right now there's a little gap there, so we'll tighten some more. Now we're done. One thing you should know is that you don't have to tighten this super tight. It just needs to be, there just needs to be no gap between the pedal spindle and the pedal casing. Check your spindle to see that it turns freely. It should turn freely without any friction, and there should be little or no play in the spindle.